Peter Paul Rubens was a great... Wrong Paul Rubens! Peter Paul Rubens was a great painter in the 17th century. If you've ever heard the term Rubenesque women, it would be because of this here fellow who painted sensual paintings, otherwise we'd show you one, of women who today would be esteemed as, well, frankly, fatties. The CEO of Abercrombie & Fitch doesn't like fatties. He simply likes to market to girls, mostly under size 10. Why? Because he doesn't want fat women modeling his product. At Abercrombie & Fitch, you'll never find yourself an XL or an XXL size because it would be bad for the Abercrombie & Fitch brand. Today, society is determined we want our women skinny. Peter Paul Rubens in the 17th century, he painted women as being far larger than what we would consider a modern-day model. They were quite heavy by today's standards, which raises the question, what makes a woman skinny? What makes a woman fat? Who determines such things? Because if we went back in time with Michael J. Fox to see a painting by Peter Paul Rubens, not Pee Wee Herman, we would see that a woman was not considered fat if she had some meat on her bones. But apparently our government and Hollywood is determined if you've got an ounce of fat on your body, you are overweight and you better be about a size 0. When are we going to have a -2, by the way? Otherwise, you don't meet the standard of a supermodel. What makes a woman overweight? What makes a woman skinny? Is it this guy? Is it Mr. Abercrombie & Fitch? Who determines what is too big or too tiny for a woman? Well, most likely it's society. Most likely it is the time that we live in. But the time that we happen to be living in right now has made a lot of women very, well, frankly, depressed about how they look. Do you realize in some nations in Africa, in some quarters of the African continent, if a woman is too skinny, it is a shame for her husband? Why? Because it would appear that he can't provide for her. And so a woman who is well-to-do actually eats quite a bit because it is a noble thing to be, well, it's raw bone, to be a bigger woman because it demonstrates that your family has some means. In Africa, being bigger is better. In the 17th century Rubenesque world, being bigger is better. In America and in most Western civilizations today, you better be skinny or you can't even walk into Abercrombie & Fitch. Recently, Joe Carter wrote an article that is very worthy of our attention. There are issues that women struggle with. Now, maybe it is something that is innate. Maybe it is a part of our fallen, broken DNA. Maybe it's actually just a part of society that puts the pressure on women. Be skinny, be skinny. Otherwise, well, you're a fatty. You can't go into Abercrombie & Fitch, as if we would actually want to. Cheap clothes, way overpriced. 10 issues that women deal with. Sir, I think we would all do well to take a look at these, recognize these, and understand these so we can understand what our wives and what our daughters face. Let's take a look at the list together, shall we? Number 10 from Joe Carter, the Dove soap campaign for real beauty, we think, hired a criminal sketch artist to draw women as they see themselves and as others see them, revealing that women's perceptions of themselves were very different than how others view them. Got the picture? A woman describes herself for this sketch artist, and then either a friend, acquaintance, or stranger describes the very same woman. Do they have the same impression of the same person? Take a look at the first sketch. It seems to me that the random stranger's description on the right is a little different than the woman's impression of herself. What about this woman's understanding of how she looks on the left versus a random stranger's description on the right? And finally, we have ourselves Melinda, who has a rather severe understanding of herself versus a random stranger's impression of her. This is how many, perhaps most women see themselves, as less beautiful than the way others see themselves. Now, here is where the Dove campaign misses the mark. They're basically saying, hey, There's this standard that man has imposed to determine whether or not you're good looking. You think you don't meet it, but alas, people think you actually do. And what does that do to a woman? Well, I think it basically puts her in the same place where she started from. Oh, okay, so the lie that society tells me, I just haven't been thinking that I've been meeting that standard, but I actually do meet the lying standard? That isn't very helpful. What does the Bible say about an issue like this? It has a completely different take. We are not Gnostic. We don't think that the body has absolutely no value whatsoever. So it doesn't mean that we say, well, beauty has no meaning, it has no value, it has no place in the Christian world. Well, that isn't true. External things have some importance, but the Bible puts the emphasis on the inner being, on what makes somebody beautiful. So here's what we see. Society says, it's external, it's external, it's external. And Dove says, don't worry, you're meeting that external standard. The Bible says, no, there's a little bit of importance with external, but it's far more important that you work on the internal things, the internal beauty. So what does that look like for a woman when you put the two together? The woman should be striving for godliness, mindful that she should do her best with what God gave her to make it as beautiful or presentable as possible, while not worrying about what the world says, because we understand that the servants might look at us and think, oh, that person sure is ugly, but who cares what the servants think when we have been accepted by the King?
4, 3, 2.
Discernment. It's not as easy as everybody claims that it is. There's discernment ministries, but these days, you've got to discern the discernment ministries. How do you do it? Get Drive-By Discernment. 70 lectures that will teach you how to discern the Word and people who are actually preaching. One, it's my only copy.